Somewhere around southeastern Nigeria, there existed a place shrouded in mystery and dread, a place the villagers whispered about only in hushed tones. It was known as the House of Cries, a name that sent shivers down the spine of anyone who dared to speak of it. But to those who knew its true nature, it was a baby factory, a place where human life was commodified and sold to the highest bidder. The building itself was a dilapidated mansion, its once grand facade now crumbling and overtaken by creeping vines and moss. Yet beneath its decaying exterior, sinister activities flourished. The mansion was run by a woman known only as Madam, a figure both feared and revered in the underworld. She was a powerful woman with connections to wealthy men in cities far away, men who desired children, not for the joy of parenthood, but for the dark rituals and twisted desires that only the rich and powerful could afford. Inside the mansion, the air was thick with despair. Young girls, some barely out of childhood themselves, were kept in confinement, their future stolen before they even began. They had been lured to the mansion with promises of jobs and a better life, only to find themselves trapped in a nightmare. Their days were spent in small, dimly lit rooms, where they were forced to bear children that were taken from them as soon as they were born. The babies, innocent and unaware of their fate, were sold to wealthy men who paid a fortune for a newborn, an infant that would serve as a symbol of their power, an offering to dark forces or worse. The transactions were conducted in secret, the buyers masked and their identities hidden. No one outside the mansion knew where the babies ended up, and no one dared to ask. One night, a young girl named Ada, who had been imprisoned in the mansion for months, decided she could bear no more. She had given birth to a child, a baby girl she had named Neka, in her heart. The thought of her daughter being sold to an unknown fate filled her with a fierce determination. She had to escape, to save Neka from the clutches of Madam and the rich men who would come for her. Ada knew it wouldn't be easy. The mansion was heavily guarded, and Madame's men were ruthless. But she had heard rumors of a resistance, people in the village who had lost loved ones to the baby factory and were quietly fighting back. They had been gathering evidence, planning to expose the operation to the world. If Ada could reach them, there might be a chance. Under the cover of darkness, Ada made her move. She crept through the mansion, clutching Neka to her chest. The baby's soft breathing was the only sound in the oppressive silence. Every step was a risk, every shadow a potential threat. But Ada's love for her daughter gave her the strength to keep going. As she neared the gates, her heart pounding in her chest, Ada was spotted by one of the guards. Panic surged through her as the alarm was raised. She ran, desperate to reach the village before they could catch her. Behind her, she could hear the shouts of the guards, the barking of dogs. But ahead, she saw the flicker of lanterns. The villagers had heard the commotion and were coming to help. In a final frantic sprint, Ada reached the village. The villagers, armed with whatever they could find, confronted the guards. In the chaos that ensued, Ada and Neka were whisked away to safety. The next morning, the village was swarming with law enforcement. The mansion, once an untouchable fortress, was raided. Madam was arrested, along with her men, and the girls who had been imprisoned were finally freed. The story of the baby factory made headlines around the world, sparking outrage and demands for justice. Ada, with Neka in her arms, stood at the edge of the village, watching as the mansion was sealed off. She knew their journey was far from over, but for the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of hope. She had saved her daughter, and together they would build a new life, one free from the shadows of the past. But in the back of her mind, Ada knew that the wealthy men who had bought babies from the factory were still out there, their power untouched by the law. And as long as there were people willing to exploit the vulnerable for profit, the fight was not over. The House of Cries had fallen, but the battle against those who commodified human life had only just begun.